In the winter of 2002, a homeless man was rooting in some rubbish bins here in the heart of West London, in an area known as Camden. What he would discover would terrify not just him, but the local residents. This, my friends, is the horrific story of Anthony John Hardy, or also known as the Camden Ripper.
A murder hunt is underway this evening to identify the victims. Whether they belong to two or three people. Britain's most wanted man.
Detectives have been studying CCTV footage. It's thought the murders could have been committed up to a week ago.
Now, our story actually goes back even further to 1972, and at the beginnings, if you will, when Anthony Hardy married his university sweetheart, Judith Wright. Now, they were married for 10 years before a sinister event occurred. Now, they'd relocated to Australia. They had 4 children. But in 1982, Hardy froze a bottle, which he then used to club Judith over the head with. Now, he also tried to drag her to the bath, where he then attempted to drown her. Now, miraculously, Judith survived that onslaught. But for some bizarre reason, they stayed together for another 4 years, and in 1986, they finally divorced. Now, Judith and the family, the kids, they stayed over in Australia to the much annoyance of Hardy. And Hardy himself returned here back to England. But he was in and out of different bar stools, I think for a good maybe 10, 15 years or so, until he ended up in Camden. Hardy, now living alone, struggled with mental health issues, engaging in troubling encounters with the law, including a 1998 accusation of rape that went unpunished. His life took a dark turn as he brought vulnerable women, often sex workers, to his flat. One of these women was Sally Rose White. She was 31 years old. Now, it was around on the 20th of January 2002 when an incident occurred at Hartland Place and the flats above where Anthony Hardy lived. And for a few weeks, if not months, Hardy had been having a lot of disagreements with a neighbour and other neighbours on that block of flats. Now, they were called at around, and I think it was around 20 to 7 that morning because of a disturbance. And what had happened was Hardy had poured some car battery acid inside the letterbox of the flat above. It was also going down the door and on the actual flooring in and outside of the flat itself. He'd also written some obscene graffiti in black paint on the door, which I'm not going to repeat here because it really is obscene. Now, the police went down to Hardy's flat. He wasn't in, so they came back later with more officers. Now, when they went into Hardy's flat to interview him and ask him about the incident above his flat, he admitted to that. But the police also had like a vibe, a weird vibe that something else was going on in that flat. And they questioned him about a bedroom and asked what was going on behind there, because you've got to remember Hardy's flat was a bit of a mess. There was graffiti, there was writing all over the walls, and things just didn't feel right with the police. They didn't feel right with the police. So they asked him what was in the bedroom, and he said he didn't know because it was a lodger and he didn't have the key. So the police managed to get entry into that bedroom, and on the bed they found the naked body of a young woman, a 31-year-old woman by the name of Sally Rose White. Now, upon initial investigation, and obviously after Hardy was arrested, the police would find a bucket of warm water, and I think it was around 25 degrees Celsius, but the ambient room temperature was only around 19. So this bucket of water had been poured probably just a matter of minutes before the police arrived. It was also soapy. Now, they would also find in that room Sally's clothing, ripped up tights, a bra. They'd also find a hoodie which had blood on the back of where the head would go, the hood itself. So Hardy was arrested and was taken in for questioning. Now, Hardy would deny any knowledge into this lady being in that bedroom. He'd say he was an alcoholic, and because of the alcohol, he used to suffer from a lot of blackouts, so would deny any knowledge. Now, a hastily arranged post-mortem took place only days later on the body of Sally, and the results came back, and it was simply she died from heart failure. She suffered from coronary diseases. That basically cut dead any further investigations into Hardy. But like I said, he would admit to pouring the car battery acid into the neighbour's letterbox. So that's all he could be arrested for. Now, he was sectioned at that point under the Section 37 of the Mental Health Act. So he spent many months in 2002 in a hospital. Now, in hospital, he would try to battle alcoholism, depression, and the anger issues that he had. But it was in November of 2002 that authorities deemed him safe enough to go back into the local population. He was released from hospital. Now, as we said right at the start of this video, it would take a sinister turn, or Hardy's life would take a sinister turn late December 2002, and it was the 30th of December. And this is when the homeless man, whilst out foraging for waste food in these waste disposal bins, he came across these black and green bags containing the body parts of what we now know was 2 victims. The victims were Elizabeth Vallad and Bridget McLennan, and we'll get more into how these people were identified later on in the video. Now, the homeless man could quite have easily have walked away and washed his hands of it and not want to get involved, and then obviously these victims would never be found because they would have been taken to the disposal waste centres. And who knows how many other people Anthony Hardy may well have gone on to kill later on in his life. And again, we'll touch upon this later on in this video. But more certainly, if it wasn't for that homeless man, things could have got a lot worse. Now, the police themselves were contacted, and they quickly cordoned off the area around Hartland Place, and where obviously these bags of human remains were found. They did an entire sweep, an entire search, but it was 36 hours later when more remains would be found over on Plender Street. And we're going to visit these locations now. We're going to go to where the first human remains were found. We're going to visit Hardy's flat, and we're going to go to Plender Street where the second lot of remains were found. And I may also add that altogether I think there was over 10, if not a dozen, bags of human remains discovered over the course of 36 hours. One on the corner where we're going to visit first, and then over in Plender Street. Now, obviously, with the body parts now being discovered, but there was no head, there were no hands found, so it was very hard to identify who these poor victims were. The police had no option but to then, they had to scour waste disposal centres, tips basically, full of millions upon millions of tonnes of human waste. Also, they had to scour canal banks, the locks nearby in Camden. Nothing else was discovered. However, Hardy's name was being mentioned in and around the police circles. Even local residents were raising concerns about this loner, this strange man, to the police. So the police went to Hardy's flat. When they got there, he wasn't around. Hardy effectively had gone on the run.
A murder hunt is underway this evening to identify the victims. Whether they belong to 2 or 3 people.
Now, where we're appearing now, or where we've ended up, is Royal College Street, and it was just around here on our left where the homeless man was routing through those bins when he would make that horrendous discovery. So we're going to make our way around to that area now, and we'll show you exactly where the bins were and where the human remains were found. And it would have been just here. And we do have TV reports and news reports at the time, so roughly just around here is where the green bin would have been with the human remains, and it was the homeless man himself that was routing, like I said, for food. Quite shocking really to believe or to think what occurred here, and it was, for best of a word, a dumping ground for human remains. So one of the news articles showed this scene cordoned off, and obviously police tape and tarpaulins, I think they're called, over the buildings. And we'll just take you guys further down. And like I said, all this has changed. This building wasn't here at the time, and there was a fence just like this just on this side. And like I said, that is exactly where the green bin was found with, like I said, human remains. On this map we are looking for Heartland, and for one flat number, and that is number 4. And it was at number 4 Heartland Place here in Camden where the serial killer once resided, and as Vicky's pointing out, is in these flats here. Now when we make our way up to that area, we are going to be as discreet as possible because we do know somebody lives there now, so obviously we don't want to be intruding on their space. But again, I keep saying it, but we do feel it is an interest, a place of, it's a place where obviously we need to show you guys, because it's where all these horrific things occurred all those years ago. So we're going to take you guys up there now, and it is just on the left around this side here. Now Anthony Hardy's old flat is just on the corner there, and it's number 4 Heartland Place. And like I said, it's where these tragic things took place many years ago. But we do have to be discreet because, like I said, people still reside there to this day. But number 4 Heartland is just there. And we're going to take you guys through this entrance here and around the side, and again there is a documentary which clearly shows the police and it all being taped off. But we're going to make our way there now. But that is number 4 Heartland Place. So number 4 Heartland Place is just through that little culvert thing there and to your right. But just like how close the place of where he placed the first bodies is literally 2 minutes in that direction and round where obviously the body parts themselves were found. So we're now going to take you guys up to Plender Street, and it is there where further human remains will be found within 36 hours of the initial discovery here, close to where Anthony Hardy once lived. So again, it's a tragic story, and it's one which still, I think, reverberates around these places. And this is why I'm not talking too loud at the moment. I don't want to offend the locals, and I don't want to upset people by bringing it up again with them. We know emotions still run raw in these parts over it, and it happened over 20 years ago. So we are trying to keep a bit of a low profile with this one. Now the green bins in question, as you'll see on the CCTV footage, looked exactly like these. But it's over here where our interest is, and it's on the corner of this building here on Plender Street. And CCTV footage would clearly show the person responsible for these atrocities and trying to dispose of these remains. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to hear me with the music, but it was just here on this corner where further human remains would be found, like I said, in a green bin. And the CCTV is still here to this day, which is there, and I'll put overlays over. But that CCTV footage would prove crucial in cracking this case, as it would show Anthony Hardy disposing of bags here which contained those remains. And these bags are exactly the same as those found further back near Heartland with the initial discovery by the homeless person. Now where we are now is a place called St Panras Gardens, but it's St Pancras Hospital mortuary where the human remains will be sent to for further analysis. Whilst all this was going on, Hardy, for the next, I think 5 days it was on the run, and nobody could find him. However, CCTV footage would soon emerge of a man placing the exact same colour bags into waste disposal units on the corner of Plender Street. And the CCTV footage itself would show Anthony Hardy being that man. The police sent images of Hardy to the local press, and they circulated them images in all the newspapers, asking for people, if they see this person, not to confront him, but obviously to get in touch with authorities. And on the 5th day, I'm sure it was the 5th day, Hardy would be captured and brought in for questioning. Now this is where the story kind of gets a bit confused.
Now the hunt for Hardy intensified, and it was in the local hospital that the police made a breakthrough. Officer Mike Burrows, collecting his insulin prescription, recognised the man in the press dubbed as the Camden Ripper. A subsequent search of the hospital grounds revealed Hardy hiding behind bins, sparking a violent confrontation.
Somebody alerted this officer to the fact that they'd seen Hardy inside the same premises as where they were now, and they'd seen his face in all the newspapers. So this officer called for backup, and 2 more officers turned up, but I'm not sure how true and how accurate this next bit is. Some articles claim that one of the officers was knocked unconscious in a melee whilst trying to apprehend Hardy. The other officer was stabbed in the hand and had one of his eyes knocked out of its socket, but he still managed to restrain Hardy until further backup came. Some people say that didn't happen and he basically gave himself up quite easily. Others, and other articles I've read and heard, seem to say differently. Nevertheless, Hardy was arrested that day and taken in for questioning. I think it was King's Cross police station, but I could be wrong with that, and if I can find any information on that, I'll put it down below. But he was taken in for questioning him. During the questioning, the police put all the evidence to Hardy, asking him why these body parts were discovered. Why was he putting rubbish bags in these waste disposal units which contained the body parts roughly at that same time? They asked him if he had any idea what was in these bags, and he just said no comment. He would say no comment to every single question thrown at him, so this was making it very hard for the police to pin anything on Hardy. Now you will be saying, well, if they've got his flat, they've got all this incriminating evidence, surely they've got enough to prosecute Hardy with murder, but they don't, because they have to prove beyond a doubt that Hardy was responsible for these crimes. And this, to be honest, even though it sounds quite simple to say, it would have been extremely difficult for the police to do, but they will do it. Now when the police first entered Hardy's flat, And from first viewings, they simply saw an absolute mess of a place. There was graffiti all over the walls. There was clear signs of some struggles having gone on at some point. But more worryingly, it was when the police went into one of Hardy's, I think it was a bedroom, they found, well, basically it was a torso. They found a torso wrapped in a black and green bin liner, such as the ones found in the waste disposal units. On top of this torso, this black wrapped torso, they found a hacksaw and they found a knife. There was also smearings of blood behind the torso and on the floor. Obviously it was a crime scene. Straight away it was a crime scene. However, it was also what other things they found in Hardy's flat that would prove to be the final nail in Hardy's coffin. And that was a roll of black bin liners found on a desk. Now these black bin liners and the striation marks, then these are marks which are made when you pull black bags away from each other off a roll. It leaves stretch marks. Now the police and the forensics very cleverly could match up the bags found with the human torso and the remains of the legs and the arms. They could match them bags up with the bags in Hardy's flat. But that just wasn't enough to prove he'd done these murders. They would also find a camera. But this camera was only found because it was a resident who'd seen the news and he'd heard everything that was going on around Anthony Hardy. And he contacted the police and basically said that Hardy had told him that there's a film, or there's some films being developed in a nearby photography place or a chemist. So the police went there and they got these films. And what they saw in these films was disturbing. There was photographs of women on Hardy's bed, but they were posed like in a sacrificial kind of way. They were wearing strange, creepy masks. Now again, people are going to say, well, how can you prove this was Hardy? Now, the camera used to take them photographs would also leave marks on the films, so the police could identify that them films came out of that camera found in Hardy's flat, and that camera obviously would have the fingerprints of Hardy. Effectively, the net was closing in on Anthony Hardy extremely fast at this stage.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally see, whoa, it's taking over, damn no closure, moving closer. No exposure, I just wanna be a loner.
No identification of these women. It would come from the breast implants that Elizabeth Vallard had. And these breast implants have unique serial numbers. So Elizabeth herself was identified fairly easily and quite rapidly. As for Bridget McClellan, she will be eventually identified through the use of DNA. So we've got two names. Now, because of what happened with Hardy at the start of 2002 and the body of Sally Rose White being found in his bedroom, the police would also reopen that file. And when they asked Hardy if he knew anything more about that crime, again, it was no comments. He wouldn't say anything at all on the three women that had now been linked to Hardy's flat. Now, as for Hardy's flat, the forensics, when they were in there, like I said, there was clear signs of a struggle. There was blood smears in and around the torso that they found. They would also use a relatively new technique, and it was using a chemical known as luminol, where two chemicals were mixed together. But when this chemical is sprayed on areas of interest or a crime scene, it would show blood, but it would bright up a luminant blue colour. so it was an indication of blood, and it was the reaction with the blood cells, the iron in our blood, in people's blood, that does this chemical reaction. You see it a lot now in crime scenes, in films and in other documentaries, but it was the use of luminol which would unravel a graphic tale, if you will, starting in the bedroom, along the landing and heading towards the bathroom. There were, I think there was either footprints or handprints in some areas. There was definitely streaks and marks on the floor. There were splatterings of blood on the walls. So luminol would also prove that a violent struggle of sorts had occurred at some stage in Hardy's flat. Obviously, with Hardy being arrested, he was charged with at least 2 counts of murder, that of Elizabeth Ballard and Bridget McLennan. He would also be charged with the murder of Sally Rose White, but it was December 2003 when he would appear in court. Now, bizarrely, considering he had said to everybody that there was no comment on any of the accusations thrown at him whilst in police custody, when he went to court, he openly admitted to everything. It was an open and shut case at that point. The police would obviously read out all the testimonies, all the witness testimonies at that, but when it went to the main courts, he admitted to all 3 counts of murder, and Hardy subsequently would be charged and found guilty of those 3 murders and made to face 3 life sentences, 1 for each crime. It was whilst Hardy was in prison that, and I think it was only a couple of years after he was actually incarcerated in prison, that another ruling was placed on him, which will basically say that Hardy would serve the entirety of his life behind bars. He would never be released into public. Such was the worry he would commit further crimes. After all, his history would prove that he was a violent man, dating back to when he married in 1972, the abuse he placed onto his wife Judith, and then obviously the 3 poor women whose lives were taken at Hardy's flat. Now, when it comes to the crimes of Anthony Hardy, or the Camden Ripper, many psychologists, doctors have all come out since and said it seems to be that there was some kind of sexual gratification and the power that Hardy could hold over females, over a small woman, you know, and it was this dominance. And when I say small woman, I meant people smaller than him, because Anthony Hardy was a big chap by all accounts. He was quite bulky, stocky, but it was this dominance over the women themselves which gave him the power. And these women were sex workers. So, and I don't mean this in a disparaging kind of way, but sex workers, he could easily visit train stations, he could roam around Camden area looking for these sex workers, and nobody bat an eyelid. He was just one man out of many hundreds, if not thousands, in and around London doing the same thing, picking up prostitutes. So he mingled in quite relatively easily, and he was bringing these women back to his place, and it was this dominance, this sexual urge, this need to be dominant over these women, which I think is the most frightening. He used to place masks on his head from all accounts whilst having sex, but the photographs that the police would find these victims in compromising positions, like they've been laid out it's like a sacrificial kind of way, but they were wearing these same masks. And I think one of them was a red devil mask, which kind of sums the man up. I mean, we've called this video The Devil Inside, which, quite rightly, he was a devil inside.
On the 25th of November 2020, Anthony Hardy died behind bars after contracting COVID-19 pneumonia at HMP Frankland in County Durham. He was 69 years old. The case of Anthony Hardy, the Camden Ripper, it leaves us with haunting questions about mental health awareness, law enforcement, and the protection of potential victims.
Now this is a tragic story and one that we are bringing to an end now here at St Pancras Gardens. We do hope you enjoyed the tale itself, even though it is a graphic one and it's a disturbing one, and it's probably one of the most disturbing ones we've covered over these last 2 years. Visiting the scenes where human body parts were discovered alone wasn't nice. Visiting a serial killer's flat felt odd, to say the least. But if you did enjoy this video, comment down below. Do you know the story of the Camden Ripper? Were you living in and around these areas where he used to roam? Comment down below and tell us your thoughts. But in the meantime, guys, we hope you sleep well. We hope you did enjoy this video, and if you did, don't forget to comment, share and subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, myself and Vicky, we are going to visit one more place of interest, but we want you to take care, look after yourselves, stay safe, stay curious, and we will be back soon with other tales from our dark but at times glorious past. Take care, everybody.